Hello, Facebook family. This is Greg Yaisley, licensed marriage family therapist, coming to you from Bakersfield Behavioral Healthcare Hospital. And today we're going to be talking about our sixth topic on humor and how does humor work with us when we're trying to deal with mental well-being. The idea that humor can be associated with mental well-being has been spreading in recent years. Therefore, a discrete body of research has been investigating the potential benefit of humor for mental health and psychological well-being. Some evidence has emerged that humor produces a positive short-term emotional change and may attenuate negative emotions as a result of cognitive distractions. Nevertheless, cross-sectional studies have found no single correlation between the sense of humor and the ability to regulate negative emotions. Different humor styles have been found to mediate the relationship between positive personality qualities and well-being. Although the mediator models used to explain this relationship are still far from producing conclusive results, research findings make clear that humor is a multi-dimensional construct consisting of components that can affect mental health and well-being either positively or negatively. Consequently, various humor styles may have different effects on social interactions as well as on mental health. Therefore, in examining the potential role of humor in improving mental health processes and psychological well-being, we should take into consideration various humor styles, contexts, and the circumstances as humor is being used. Individual differences in humor style have been identified, and these humor styles appear to be differentially related to well-being. One study sought to replicate and extend previous findings by investigating whether the differential effects of humor styles on well-being may be explained by their association with social support, something that's been lacking recently, and whether the weak and inconsistent relationship between aggressive humor and well-being may be due to a moderate role of gender. Individual differences in humor styles have been identified, and these humor styles appear to be differentially related to well-being. One study sought to replicate and extend previous findings by investigating whether the differential effects of humor style on well-being may be explained by their association with social support, and whether the weak and inconsistent relationship between aggressive humor and well-being may be due to a moderating role of gender. A total of 826 undergraduate students completed a series of online standardized questionnaires, including the Humor Style Questionnaire, the Beck Depression Inventory, Satisfaction with Life Scale, and the Interpersonal Support Evaluation List, or the ISIL-12. Mediation analysis revealed that the positive relationship between affiliative and self-enhancing humor and well-being were explained to be a greater perceived availability of support. Meanwhile, the negative association between self-defeating humor and well-being was mediated by lower levels of perceived support. Moderation analysis provided preliminary support for the idea that an aggressive humor style may be related to higher levels of social support among men and lower social support among women. Further research on the interpersonal context of humor and the role of gender in human styles, social relationships, and well-being is warranted. Simply explained, imagine a tribe of a bunch of guys going across the Savannah Desert, followed by one woman, right? The men would be tripping each other and laughing and joking, and that kind of aggressive humor would be funny amongst them. But the woman, when she got left behind, she would take off her chancla and throw it at the closest person, and that would be funny to her. There are other relevant studies. Laughter increases people's willingness to disclose, even though they may not necessarily be aware that it is doing so. Conversational laughter help prevent or resolve risk of confrontation in addiction therapy, which I think is really cool. And in patients with schizophrenia, a humor and laughter intervention reduced hostility and depression and anxiety scores, improving activation scores and social support, lowered levels of psychopathology, and improved social competence. Pretty interesting stuff. What about the physiological effects of humor on the body? For muscle relaxation, periods of intense laughter are followed by relaxed muscle tones. Also, we have a change in heart and respiration rates. Laughter leads to increased heart rate, respiratory rate, and oxygen consumption. We know that, but after that, then the relaxation comes. Measures of anxiety and heart rate and blood pressure. Exposure to a humorous stimulus decreased self-reported anxiety in a group of college students who were waiting to receive an electric shock, but it did not significantly affect psychological measures of anxiety, heart rate, and blood pressure compared to those in a no humor controlled group. Relaxation as measured by biofeedback. College students who scored high on internal locus of control had increased relaxation following exposure to humorous stimuli. There's also noted some various hormonal changes with laughter, also some differences in the immune system that comes with laughter. And I think that the most important part here is that even though you may be watching something funny on TV, it's not really important whether it's humorous as you're watching it, but whether or not you actually let out laughter. When you're letting out that laughter, that's when you're getting the most benefit. So go ahead and just laugh hysterically. In an article published by Nature Reviews on Neuroscience, it's reported that a study result indicated that humor is rooted in the frontal lobe of the cerebral cortex. And this study states, humor seems to engage in a core network of cortical and subcortical structures, including temporo-occipital, parietal areas involved in detecting and resolving incongruity between what you expect and what is the presented stimuli. And the mesocardiolimbic dopaminergic system and the amygdala, they are all key structures for reward and salience of processing. What are the 4 styles of humor? How do you find things funny? How do you use humor? And when you do find things funny, what sort of humor appeals to you? Research has focused on 4 different types of humor, and they distinguish the 4 types. Rod Martin and his colleagues have studied these types of humor and developed the Humor Style Questionnaire, which measures these 4 types. So when we say that someone has a great sense of humor, we really need to know what sort of humor the person is prone to use, because the humor style will create very different impressions and have different impacts on others. So the affiliative humor type. This involves telling jokes about things that everyone finds funny. The goal here is to use humor to bring people together and to find the humor in everyday life. This type of joking told by comedians like Jerry Seinfeld that focus on the comedy in everyday life represent this sort of humor. The goal is to create a sense of fellowship, happiness, and well-being. And if you are fond of jokes about animals and everyday occurrences, then you are using affiliative humor. Probably the one that I agree the most with. However, that aggressive humor found by those people running along the savannah, this involves put-downs or insults targeted towards individuals. This is the humor that is used by more aggressive comedians that put down other people, artists, such as Don Rickles or the late Joan Rivers. When it is intended to threaten or psychologically harm others, it is a type of humor used by bullies. While some of the audience to this type of humor will find it funny, others might laugh to cover up a feeling of discomfort. Thirdly, the 3rd type, self-enhancing humor. This is being able to laugh at yourself, such as making a joke when something bad has happened to you. Trying to find the humor in everyday situations and make yourself the target of the humor in a good-natured way. It is related to healthy coping with stress. Jon Stewart from The Daily Show often uses self-enhancing humor by saying things such as, "Maybe I just don't understand," or "I'm not the brightest guy." Number 4, the 4th type of humor, self-defeating humor. Putting yourself down in an aggressive or poor me fashion is called self-defeating humor. The late comedian Rodney Dangerfield would be an example. "I don't get no respect," he'd say. "I was an ugly baby." things like that. Psychologically, this can be an unhealthy form of humor and is sometimes used by targets of bullies to try to avoid attacks, making oneself the butt of jokes before others put you down. There are some social benefits to laughter. 3 that I can think of: cooperation, communication, and romance. Laughter is mainly about relationships. We live in a society that tends to isolate and divide people, and particularly now at this time. Laughter promotes person-to-person bonding. In some research, it suggests that 80% of our laughter occurs during everyday comments in everyday social situations and only acts as social signals of goodwill and friendship. Robert Provin, a neurobiologist who studies laughter with help from 3 graduate students, went to places such as shopping malls and eavesdropped on more than 1,200 people having conversations. They noted who was speaking and who was listening, who laughed and when, and whether the speaker and the listener were female or male. They found that the person speaking laughed 46% more than the listener. Furthermore, the response to the speaker depended on the speaker's gender. People, whether male or female, laughed more readily in response to a male speaker. The researchers observed that laughter rarely interrupted speech. Instead, laughter came at the end of a phrase, much as punctuations that follow in a written sentence. They also found out that it is up to 30 times easier to laugh in a group than on your own. Laughter also improves communication. Laughing together can greatly improve cooperation and empathy between people in different cultural backgrounds. It fosters better communication, which leads to a less confrontational approach in tense situations and a change from individual competitiveness to team cooperation. Voluntary, simulated laughter in particular is most beneficial for very socially and culturally diverse groups, thanks to its universal and inclusive nature, because it means that you can all join in and develop a sense of belonging. The English comedian John Cleese said, "I'm struck by how laughter connects you with people. It's almost impossible to maintain any kind of distance, any sense of social hierarchy when you're just howling with laughter. Laughter is a force of democracy." Lastly, laughter improves romance. Laughter is usually an indicator of family vitality and healthy couples. Laughter is very attractive at the interpersonal level, especially for women. Men use much more humor and laughter when it comes to discussing sensitive health issues. They also prefer women who laugh at their wit. In women, laughter would be more associated with a greater social support in relationships and is a tool to cope with stress. According to research, the old adage is still true. Women tend to prefer a man with a sense of humor. I hope this is helpful to you. Remember to laugh often and laugh well and laugh out loud. And remember, we're all in this together and we are alone together. Thank you.